The Carl Nelson Show.
And Grand Rising family, and thanks for kicking off your Wednesday with us. To get us started, a group of sisters have joined us from the Caribbean. I say good morning and Grand Rising to Sister Brianna. Grand Rising, welcome back to the program.
Yes, good morning, Carl. Good morning. I have Sherween here representing St. Lucia. I have Fiona here representing St. Lucia as well. And I have Chantal representing Nevis of St. Kitts and Nevis. And we are all in Dominica right now. They're here.
Wow.
Morning. Good morning.
Good morning. Good to have you sisters on. And you guys have a podcast that we'll talk about that. But I want to talk about the fact that many of you relocated from the UK. What was I guess you are originally from the Caribbean, but then you went to the UK and now you're going back home. How did that come about?
I can start. So this is Fiona here, and I relocated to St. Lucia a year ago. Chantal and Sherween left before me, and I was very inspired by they're deciding to say, we are leaving Babylon, we are going back home. We have spent over 20 years in the UK, and we felt that we wanted to just rebuild our lives back in the Caribbean. Yes, London is a city that has it all, but we just felt that we had enough, and we just wanted to be reconnected back to our Caribbean soil.
That is interesting because, we have quite a few listeners in the UK, most of them around London, East London, South London, North London, and because they always tell me the different areas, and I know you guys know the different areas, like people who are in LA know it's South Central and in Southeast in DC and Harlem in New York. They know what areas mean. So usually when they call, or they always mention where they're from East London or from North London or South London. But they say there is a repatriation process going on with blacks in Britain, and they don't like that term, Black Britons. Is this true? Are Africans in the UK going back home? Many of them, they tell me, going back to Africa, and not necessarily the country of their origins, where their parents came from. Let's say they're the Nigerians, they go to Ghana or Kenya. Are you seeing that as well when you were in the UK?
This is Chantal. Good morning. Thank you for having us. I think there is definitely a movement, a repatriation movement. For me personally, when I moved to the UK, my intention was to spend 2 years, and it ended up, as Fiona said, being just over 20. And I just feel that there are a lot of people who view home differently to our parents and grandparents. And so for me, UK was always temporary. It was never in my mind permanent. For me, home is where I feel my most vibrant, where I thrive the most. I feel the most connected to my community. I'm rooted. And I didn't want to wait until retirement age, so to speak. I wanted to come back home where I can still contribute. And not to say that people who are retirement age and older can't contribute, but quite frankly, I wanted the energy to be able to do so. And so I have no regret. Yes, there are things about my London life, East London, that I do miss. But I can bring those things here, for sure.
Do you follow what's going on in London now, or are you just totally disconnected from what's going on in the UK?
Hi. Connected, yes, very much. For me, my kids are still there. My kids live there, so I am on the phone to them every day. So I watch the news. I stay on top of what's happening. Sometimes I know what's happening before them. So definitely very much connected in that way. But if you're asking whether or not I miss London, nope, not 1 second. Not 1 second.
Oh, wow.
I think I wish I left sooner. And people will wonder, well, why? What's so wrong with London? It's not just what's so wrong. It was like you living on a hamster wheel. That's my opinion. It's like living on a hamster wheel. Every day, the more you work, the more you try, the more you do, there's not much to show for it, to be honest. Yes, the money is great, but we spend a lot of money as well. So I was like, just what's the point? Whereas coming back home, again, like Chantal said, it's not been easy. However, I am at peace. I have my freedom. I wake up every day excited to know what's happening, excited to see what I'm going to do, excited for the sunset, excited for the thing I feel like I'm actually living. And have access to a lot less money than I had when I was in London, but my life, the way my life has changed, it's just been amazing, and I just wish I did it 5 years sooner.
Wow. And let me ask you this, though, Sherween, because you're from St. Lucia, and you mentioned your children are still in London. Do they understand the move that you made? Because they were born there, so I guess they feel more connected, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, they feel more connected to Britain than they are to St. Lucia?
Well, two of my kids weren't born. They were born in St. Lucia, but I brought them up when they were very, very young. So they were 4 and 1. So obviously, their life in the UK, that's all they know, more or less. And my son was born in the UK as well. So yes, they are more connected. However, they love St. Lucia. I brought 2 of them down with me when I moved in 22, and they stayed for 6 months. And they absolutely loved it. My daughter, one of my daughters are there now, but my kids are grown, so they have that choice, and they're very happy for it. Trust me, they know they have the Caribbean as their home, but at the same time, they're not ready to move back. Life is a bit slower back in the Caribbean, but I think for their ages, it's best that they stay where they are for now and acquire whatever they want to acquire. But they always know they have a home to come to, and that's what I'm doing, building that home for them.
Well, let me ask Fiona this, also from St. Lucia, because Fiona, when people hear about St. Lucia, Julianne Alford put St. Lucia on the map when she won the Olympic gold medal at the games. Everyone was like, St. Lucia, everybody was talking about the American sprinters or the Jamaican sprinters were going to win, but Julianne Alford put St. Lucia on the map. What is it about St. Lucia you think that we should know, other than that you got one of the top sprinters in the world?
St. Lucia is peace. St. Lucia, we have a very rich culture. Like, I think one of the things, we get millions of tourists come to the Caribbean, and people come for the beaches. Some people come for carnival now. But the richness of our culture, I think we have a culture that has so much strength, so much power. Our Creole language, the language that we speak in St. Lucia, people say it's broken French. It's not. It is how our ancestors chose to speak, and not choose to speak it in a way that the colonizer was forcing them to speak, right? So that we have a whole entire culture centered around this Creole language. There's music, there's drumming, there's a style of dress, and I find it, as I get older, it's even more powerful. So yes, I can tell you about the beautiful mountains of St. Lucia and the beaches, and yes, we have great parties, of course, all of those things. But, I encourage people to look at our culture as well, which is very unique and entirely just so, so beautiful.
All right, family, just waking up at 10 after the top of the hour. It was a panel of sisters from the Caribbean with us this morning. They've moved back to the Caribbean. They're actually from the Caribbean, lived in the UK, and then now they're back home and they're telling us their story. And they have a podcast. So I'll give you all that information before you leave so you can follow them as they discuss this situation in the Caribbean. And Fiona, you mentioned that you have a language, and this may be a stupid question for you, but for us, we'd hear about Haitian Creole. Is St. Lucian Creole the same, or is it different?
It's similar, but it has its differences. So, for example, some of the fundamental nouns and things are the same with Haitian Creole. But then, so for example, if you say, I am eating, I'm going to eat, right? In St. Lucian Creole, say "Weka manger," right? But in Haitian Creole, say "Map manger." So if I was talking to a Haitian or whatever, St. Lucian could understand a Haitian can understand a St. Lucian, but it has its small difference.
Gotcha. And Chantal, you're from Nevis in Jamaica. How are you from both places? Can you explain that for us?
I am from both places. So my biological father is Jamaican. My mother is Nevisian. And they met in Manchester, UK. My mom was living there. My dad was studying and eventually decided to put roots there as well. So I am a mix of a big and small island.
All right, but you also did what we do here, working on the radio. Is there a difference from being in the UK on the radio, the media, different from and you guys are in Dominica now, of all places. You're not even home. Is it different in the Caribbean, the radio industry, the media industry, from what you accustomed to in the UK?
For me, I guess, yeah, there was a little bit of a difference. When I started in radio in the Caribbean, it was very casual, right? It wasn't like a big deal. See, I mean, this is going back, I'm showing my age, almost 30 years ago now. Huh? So it was a lot easier, a lot more accessible. In the UK, when I started in radio, I really had to prove, number one, that I had stories to tell. I had something to say. It wasn't taken for granted. I had to start with an internship, whereas back home, I was just kind of thrown in at the deep end, like, okay, you want to be in radio? Here we go. But I had to start with an internship. And what I really loved about being on radio in the UK was that I got to do everything. So I wasn't just a radio personality, on-air personality. I got to produce. And I found as well in the UK that you had to have a very specific niche. And so I made my niche the stories of the Caribbean community because that's what came naturally to me. So for me, that was the difference then.
All right, ladies, hold on a sec. We got to take a short break here. It's 14 minutes after the top of the hour. Family just waking up, but we have a guest, a panel from the Caribbean. There's three sisters, and they do have a podcast app, so you can follow them. And they used to live in the UK, and they moved back to the Caribbean. They're telling their story. Family, thanks for waking up with us on this Wednesday morning, another hump day. We're halfway through the work week. We have three sisters joining us from the Caribbean. They're in Dominica right now, but they're from St. Lucia and from Nevis. St. Kitts and Nevis? Is that the combination?
Yes.
Is that the system? Yeah, okay. I just want to make sure. That's Chantal, and we have Sherween, and we also have Fiona. Let me ask you about your podcast, though, because when did you guys decide to start the podcast and why?
This is Sherween. It was a group chat. It was a group chat during the pandemic. The three of us, we pretty much got along, spoke all the time. And then during the lockdown in 2020, we decided, you know what, let's have a group chat. And every single day we would be on that group chat, talking, laughing, crying, just everything. Because what else could we do? And then one time I said, you know, something, there must be other people willing or going through the same thing, speaking about the same things, just connecting. So I decided, okay, girls, let's start a podcast. Literally, and that's it. It was from the group chat, and we decided, let's run with it. This was I don't want to call it, it wasn't a hobby. I love doing it. It's something, I just love meeting up with my girls and talking. And we never expected that there were so many people it resonated with. So many people from across the world. We've got listeners in over 121 countries. And everybody, they were all coming to us saying, oh, my God, we needed this. Oh, yes, I'm going through that as well. Oh, my God, yes, thank you so much. So this was like, whoa. At the beginning, we did not know it would have gone down so well with ladies, gentlemen. We have male followers. We have people from everywhere. So, it started off as a podcast, as a group chat, and it's called the Relatable Podcast. Funny enough, I think, Chantal, you came up with that name?
Yes, I did.
The Relatable Podcast.
And Chantal, did you guys, what do you guys talk about? Is it girly stuff, or do you talk about the Caribbean? Do you talk about cooking? What do you guys talk about on the podcast?
Honestly, we speak about everything because once we've gotten into the swing of it, we realized, and not that we weren't aware before, but most people had a pretty monolithic viewpoint of who Caribbean people are, what our stories are, and we're so multifaceted, right? Our stories range from the traditional, non-traditional, obscure, funny, sad, everything. And so, again, this is why it's called Relatable.
And having said that, how much of an American influence are we seeing in the Caribbean now? Because, we go to Africa, they see this stuff on television. They want to be like the young people here. Are you seeing a lot of that in the Caribbean, the rappers and the hip hop scene, though? You know what I'm talking about.
And we do. And, definitely, in Nevis, I mean, I grew up between Nevis and the UK, and I have to say, we got cable television in the early 80s, and the American influence from that alone, there's so many things that were absorbed. I remember being a teenager in Nevis and longing to go to a mall, to go to a mall and hang out. Like, that was such a big deal. And longing to go to college in the U.S. so I could be a part of a black sorority and just, do all these amazing things that I saw on television. And, of course, there's hip hop. Although there is a debate where hip hop originated from. I will not get into that, but there's definitely a very thick Caribbean influence on hip hop. So yes, and that, I think that influence has continued. I can't speak for St. Lucia, but I can definitely speak for Nevis. And there was a point where we absorbed some of the not so great things too. But I think now, again, because people are repatriating at a much earlier age, there is a counterbalance to that in that, people are saying, look, our things are cool and hip too, right? We have enough stories that we can tell without being influenced so much, not just by American culture, and I'm going to be a little bit controversial, but also Black American culture, right? We have our own things going on. So let's kind of stand on that 10 toes down and really amplify that. Fiona has a wonderful platform that does just that. Know Your Caribbean. So yeah, we're out here doing our thing too, and maybe not turning our backs because, Black people, we are so similar in many ways as well. But I think it's absolutely fine to champion our differences as well and speak about those.
All right. And Fiona, what are some of the misconceptions about everyday life in the Caribbean? We just think it's just laid back because we see it from a tourist kind of view because you're there for a few days and then you're back and you get to relax. But what is the everyday life in the Caribbean that the listeners probably don't know about?
Well, I mean, one of the reasons why we move back home is there is that laid back attitude, but not necessarily in the way that it's perceived. So, for example, like being in the Caribbean, you actually get to see your friends. So, like if you're in the UK, it could be 6 months, sometimes a year, you're not seeing your friends, right? Because you're tired, you're in the rat race. But in the Caribbean, I would say for more the smaller islands, I cannot speak for larger islands like Jamaica or Cuba, Haiti, who have their populations in the millions. But if you come from an island that is in the hundreds of thousands, or for example, Nevis is 11,000. Am I right, Chantal?
Excuse me, we are 14,000 now.
Forgive me. So Nevis is 14,000 people. So you get to see your loved ones more. So you may be driving down the road, or you may be going somewhere, and then you bounce up on your friend, and then you catch up, you have a drink together. So those things don't need to be planned. Things happen spontaneously, and that is the beauty about being at home and where you can get to connect with the people that you love. And you don't have to, let's meet for dinner on Thursday at this restaurant, and who's going to drive and who's parking, and there's none of that. It just happens. So there's a certain freedom in that. But, I would say Caribbean people have their stresses like everybody else. We all have to pay insurance. We all have to pay rent. We all have to do 9 to 5, whatever. There's, hotel workers have to work the night shift. So we have the stresses like everyone else. I think the difference about living in the Caribbean is we have places for respite. So we can go to the beach and have lunch in our office clothes. Lots of bank workers, you see them drive down by the beach with their Tupperware, their lunch. They sit, they watch the ocean in their suits and tie. They eat their lunch and they go back to work. So we have those moments of respite. We can go and watch the sunset after a long day of work. We can sit by the beach and watch the full moon. So we have those things to, I think, counterbalance the stress and the rat race. But that doesn't mean we don't have our own version of it either.
Wow, that's cold of you, to paint that picture of going to the beach and having lunch. It's getting cold here in the States, as you know, and it's getting cold in London as well. You guys are going, it's going to the beach, for lunch and just having, oh man, you just painted a picture in many of our eyes right there. But I got to ask you, because these islands are so small, I guess everybody knows everybody then. You're talking about 14,000 people. Everybody knows everybody.
Yeah, definitely in Nevis, there is a sense of just one big family, which makes dating problematic, okay? But for sure, and that's the beauty of being home for me. It's like you go into town and you're not really bothered about how you're going to get home because, someone will give you a ride home. Or you can walk home depending on where you live in proximity to Charlestown. You're never really stranded, You're never really stranded, and that is a beautiful thing.
Well, let me share this. I had a stopover in St. Lucia on the way to Grenada, and we was going to Grenada. This is after the shootings when Reagan sent the troops down there to shoot the Maurice Bishop, that whole deal. But we stayed with a friend in Grenada, and he left his home open. We're just leaving. The door, not just unlocked, the door was wide open. I'm like, man, aren't you going to close the door? He says, nah, everybody knows everybody in Grenada. We don't have to close the doors. I was like, wow. Come from New York and LA and that kind of stuff. We don't leave the doors open. The door was wide open. Mm-hmm. Nobody's going to come in here because everybody knows everybody. So that was interesting to me. And I guess this is the picture that you're painting. Is it the same way in St. Lucia, in Nevis, and Dominica?
Yes, for Nevis, for sure.
For St. Lucia, it's still that way to a certain extent. Obviously, we've got like 180,000 people. So there's a bit more. It's still that way, but different parts of the island. Dominica, very much. Yes, Dominica is still very open. Everybody is just one big happy family down here as well. We're sat right now in the middle of the jungle, a house on 2 acres, nobody near us for about 2 miles, a mile.
Wow.
So it is like that.
We're coming on a break, and before we let you sisters go, how can people subscribe to your podcast? Because, now, like I mentioned, it's getting cold, and the closest thing some of us can get to warm weather, be listening and watching your podcast. How can we subscribe?
Okay, so we'll call the Relatable podcast. So that's Relate, Relate, and then Able, Able. The Relatable podcast, you could find us on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, YouTube, wherever you get your podcast fix. I'm going back to the podcast line. Wherever you get it. We're on Instagram. We're on TikTok now. So, we're all over the place. If you want to reach out to us, I think the quickest way you'll get a response is via Instagram. We're always on there posting. Now that we're in Dominica, we'll be sending lots of beautiful shots to you. If you want some sunshine, you could probably find us there. But we're all over.
So it's all on the Relatable podcast, correct?
That's right. Yes.
Well, thank you for bringing some warmth to our broadcast this morning. Thank you, ladies. Thank you, Fiona. Thank you, Sherween. And thank you, Chantal. And thank you, Brianna, for setting this up for us. Thank you, ladies. And thank you for the information you shared with our audience this morning.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us.